So first off, I realize it's a really bold claim saying these are a must-have accessory, but for certain people, including myself, I really do think that it earns that designation. But even if the idea of shelling out a few $100s for what is, admittedly, a very expensive niche accessory has you a little bit skeptical, I can't say that I blame you in the slightest. So today let's take a closer look at the Viture XR/AR Glasses Pro, what you actually get, how they perform, the pros and cons, and ultimately who I think these are and are definitely not for. But first let's take a look at what you actually get in the box, or rather I should say boxes, because in addition to the glasses themselves, the fine folks at Viture also sent me a few accessories to go along with it. In addition to the glasses themselves, they also sent over a special edition 8-bit Do controller, a USB-C adapter to allow the glasses to be used while you charge the Steam Deck, and finally, a wild-looking lens shade whose primary purpose is to black the lenses for easier viewing, but whose secondary purpose is to make you look absolutely ridiculous, and I completely love it. Because seriously, this is just silly at worst, or absolutely brilliant marketing at best if you actually wear these out and about. The charging adapter works exactly as you would expect, sending endless power to your Steam Deck while you use the glasses if you require it, or at least delivering power for a much longer period of time if you're using something like a beefy backup battery with it and you're using it on the go. Now as for that 8-bit Do controller they included, stylistically it perfectly aligns with the color scheme of the glasses, and it performs exactly as you'd expect. It doesn't feel or perform much differently than other 8-bit Do controllers that I use frequently, but if you want a deeper dive into this style of controller, you can check out my full review of the 8-bit Do Ultimate Wireless controller from last year. Again, this is very similar in quality to other 8-bit Do controllers that I've used before. The only major difference that I found was it does not come with an included wireless charging base or something like that, but ultimately it's still a solidly performing wireless USB-C rechargeable controller that pairs just fine with the Steam Deck. The Viture Pro XR/AR glasses present what is effectively a 135-inch 120Hz display right in front of your face. So if you've ever found yourself yearning for the larger display of playing dock mode on the go, especially for something like air travel, these were explicitly designed to meet that desire. And I should point out that that design extends beyond the glasses themselves to what's included in the box and even the packaging itself. And that becomes pretty evident as soon as you lay hands on the box. It feels shockingly premium, and there isn't an ounce of poorly thought out, cheaply designed materials to be found. If you've ever opened an Apple product, you will know exactly what to expect, but for more gaming-centric analog, I would say that it feels very similar in quality to the first time that I opened up my Oculus Rift when that headset first came out. They definitely want it to feel like an experience, and they knocked it out of the park not just with the quality of packaging, but the accompanying literature, branding, and instructions are all well placed and easy to understand. And when it comes to those instructions, I opted to ignore them entirely, but we'll get to that in a little bit. For now, let's look at what else is in the box. Once you pop this guy open, you'll find the requisite documentation, warranty, and quick start guide, along with a cleaning cloth. The glasses themselves are packed inside an included and very high quality and sturdy hardshell protective case, and finally a variety of nose pads that you can swap in to find the most comfortable fit for your face to ultimately have the best experience. And again, as setup goes, I opted to completely ignore the documentation, mostly because I wanted to see how idiot-proof it was and how quickly I could just get into the action if I just wanted to throw these things on my face, plug in the cable, and see what would happen. And I'm happy to report that same attention to detail also extends to the design of the product itself, because the Steam Deck had no problem whatsoever immediately detecting these as an external display, and I was ready to go with no setup time to speak of whatsoever. It's completely effortless thanks to a single USB-C connection on the Steam Deck end, and on the other it has a MagSafe-like connector that immediately snaps into place on the right arm of the glasses quickly and easily. Plus, as a magnetic, MagSafe-like connection, it has the added benefit of hopefully reducing the chance that you'll turn your head too quickly and either rip the cable out of your Steam Deck or damage the glasses in some way, both of which would be terrible, so I thought this was a really thoughtful design inclusion. Also, as a predominantly Steam and Steam Deck channel, I know it makes the most sense for me to talk about how well these work with the Steam Deck, but I should point out that it also works with a variety of other devices as well, including USB-C phones, and I think they also have an adapter for the iPhone if you still have a Lightning phone, so you can use it that way. It works with the iPad Pro, which I also tested it with, and then they also make a mobile Switch dock that will let you use it with that on the go as well. Now, they did end up sending that to me in a separate package later on. At this point, I'm not sure if I've gotten B-roll of that yet. Hopefully I have, but just suffice it to say, it's a very flexible accessory that doesn't just work with the Steam Deck, but you could also use it in a variety of other use cases as well if you have a lot of tech lying around. So again, even if you don't have a Steam Deck and you just like the idea of a private theater of sorts on your face, you might also get some mileage out of this. So yeah, that's what's included in the box, and also look at some of the other ways that you might utilize these particular glasses, but how does it actually perform when connected to the Steam Deck? So let's go ahead and look at comfort, fit, and build quality first, because it really doesn't mean anything if all of these niceties are included if the actual experience of trying to put them on and use them is cumbersome, but again, I'm happy to report that it isn't. Personally, I found the number 3 set of included nosepads to be the most comfortable, but I did take some time to go ahead and experiment with the different ones included to see if there was anything that might have been a better fit for me, and also just to test how quick it was to swap these out, because as I had a few different friends try it, it didn't quite fit their face the same way that it fit mine, so I did want to spend some time just kind of swapping these things in and out to see how hard that would be, and it does click into place really quickly and easily. Overall, they definitely weigh more than just a standard pair of sunglasses would, and you can definitely feel that difference, but I wouldn't call it uncomfortable by any stretch of the imagination just because the weight difference is very slight, and while it's a little bit heavier, it's not so heavy that you're going to have any major discomfort on the bridge of your nose or anything like that, or at least I didn't. Now when it comes to the optics themselves, that's a really hard thing to communicate, and for this particular product, an even more difficult thing to try and film, but I did my best. To put it bluntly, the image is extremely clear, and I think that's thanks to a few thoughtful details. For starter, the micro OLED panels they're using in these just look incredible. Colors are rich and vivid, and blacks look truly black rather than just a really dark gray. Each lens of the glasses has independent adjustment dials for myopia, so you can compensate for nearsightedness as well. To test these out, I just closed each eye independently and then spun the dial until the image looked clear, and the image retained that same clarity throughout the rest of my testing. On the audio front, each one of the arms on the glasses has its own built-in speaker, and I was sort of assuming that given its size that I would be in for a pretty tinny, kind of middling experience. But as it turned out, they actually sound pretty great. Not the same quality you would get from a good dedicated pair of headphones or anything like that, but definitely better balanced than I was expecting, and a little bit bassier, actually. So yeah, that was actually a pretty nice surprise that in a pinch, if you did not have a really nice pair of headphones available, you could still get the job done and have a pretty decent experience. The left arm has a rocker for adjusting the volume, and it also has a single menu button that you can press if you want to swap modes of that rocker button to also adjust the brightness of the displays rather than just the volume. This same button can be used if you want to engage the electrochromic filter of those glasses, which will black out the optics even more to give you a better image clarity. Which, I think that's a really nice inclusion, but honestly if you're using the lens shield like I do, which again pulls double duty protecting the glasses themselves, I don't think you would really need to engage this that often, but it is nice that it's there. These also do support a 3D mode if you're into that kind of thing, but yeah, suffice it to say, these are pretty easy to operate, and it's pretty straightforward to just kind of feel your way through their operation. On the comfort front, these are mostly pretty comfortable, although I will say that if you use over-ear headphones, depending on what kind they are, you may experience some discomfort. For instance, I had an old pair of Bose QC700s lying around, and while those have very soft, pillowy ear cups, I didn't really experience any discomfort using those, but if you use something like AirPods Max or any other headset that just has a really brutal sort of clamp of force on the side of your skull when you're using them, it's probably going to press the arms of those glasses into your temples and not feel very good. But if you're somebody who more commonly uses earbuds, then this isn't even going to be a concern for you at all, but yeah, just something to be aware of on the comfort front if you're somebody who does strive for the most immersive experience possible. And that probably is what we should talk about next, is the immersion factor. So to set expectations, especially if you're a VR veteran who's had experience with like, the Meta Quest or the HTC Vive or a Rift or PSVR or anything like that, this is not the same thing. Yes, it does have some AR capabilities and software that you can download and install to facilitate that if you're using it with a desktop or something, but ultimately this is not the same as putting on a VR headset where you're instantly going to be transported and just completely immersed in whatever game that you're trying to play. And that's not even a knock against the headset, rather I do see that as a feature, because one of the things that I like most about these glasses is that it does allow me to maintain some presence in the real world without feeling like I'm completely isolated from everything that's around me. Your peripheral vision is intact while you're using these, so it's less like you're diving into the Matrix, and more like a big screen TV just sort of magically materialized right in front of your face with content that only you can see. All the while, you can still remain pretty cognizant of everything that's going on around you if you want. And you know what? That is something that I really like about these glasses, is the fact that if I was on a road trip with friends, or if I was, using these temporarily while I was around company, you can definitely still continue a conversation with people and, maintain some understanding of your surroundings while you're using these. Granted, you will still look like a total weirdo, especially if you're using the shield for them, but still, it is nice to not feel completely blocked off from everything that's going on around you. Now on the flip side, while it does allow you to keep one foot firmly planted in reality, you can definitely go the other direction and try to make this an incredibly immersive experience. It's just going to take a couple of extra steps. For starters, I'd recommend getting and using the shield to fully block out whatever you're staring at behind the displays. And then secondarily, much like using a projector, you'll really get the best experience out of these if you're playing them in a dark room. Don't get me wrong, you can totally play them in the brightest room imaginable, and I have to say they are perfectly visible, but if you really want to feel more immersed in it, then a dark environment with a good set of headphones will do wonders to make your play experience a more thrilling one. Personally, I spent a whole lot of time playing games like Grand Theft Auto 4 on the Steam Deck while using these. I also played a fair amount of Children of the Sun, and then I also did a lot of emulation to see what that experience was like, and it was great fun experiencing Silent Hill 2 almost in an entirely new way, just on this gigantic display that was floating in front of me. Also, that's something else I should touch on from a performance standpoint, is the battery drain for these is absolutely negligible. I'm not saying that you would never ever have use of the charging accessory to make sure you can keep feeding power to your Steam Deck, but when I was doing emulation on it, I wasn't sure how much of a hit that I would take throwing this to an external display that was on my face, but ultimately I was still getting anywhere between 4 and 5 hours of emulation time for playing Silent Hill 2, and that was pretty great. And I absolutely can't wait to test this out on a plane when I fly out to Texas here in a few months. Also, one other major feather in the cap of the Viture AR XR Glasses Pro is that I had not considered just how much more comfortable they would make my Steam Deck playing experience. Now, what I'm talking about specifically is things regarding like your neck and your spine. So I say this as somebody who has an issue with my neck. I have a kind of a degenerative disc disorder between my C6 and C7, I think. So basically the disc that separates the vertebrae on my neck, there's one that's a little bit thinner than it should be. I kind of went over this a little bit when I was doing the Beat Saber video just years ago on this channel. I kind of talked about it there, but long story short, if you're somebody who loves playing on the Steam Deck, but you don't relish the idea of keeping your head sort of locked in this downward angle, or you find that to be very uncomfortable, these are absolutely a godsend, because you can, just play the Steam Deck laying down in bed, or you can really just look at any angle and you're going to have a perfect view of the action, and that sort of comfort immediately was appealing for me personally. And again, this is probably something that's aimed at older, more seasoned players like myself, perhaps. Maybe not a big deal if you don't have any like neck or spine issues, or if you're a younger player or something like that. But it was another feature that just really made me appreciate playing this, and honestly made it a go-to accessory for me for most of my Steam Deck play when I'm just, playing personally around the house. However, for everything I loved about using these glasses, I did have a few light criticisms. Nothing that's deal-breaking necessarily, but definitely things that I noticed. And first off, one of the things that I would say you have to be a little bit cognizant of is ambient light. One of the things that I found is if I was wearing like a dark t-shirt like I am now, if there's a lot of ambient light in the room, I would find that this design would get reflected in the glasses, which for playing a game that is, very dark, that can be kind of distracting. Now, honestly, it's, again, not a deal-breaker. It's something you will, sort of just adjust to naturally. I think it's the same thing as if you saw like a reflection in your TV or something like that, I guess, but it may be more pronounced if you're playing a game that, takes place in a lot of dark environments or something like that, where you'll see whatever's on your shirt just sort of reflected right back at you in the lenses. Not an issue if you're wearing dark clothing, however, or again, if you're playing in a darkened room. Also, while these glasses are definitely comfortable, sometimes you will have to make mid-game adjustments on your nose to make sure that you have the vertical field of view right. I'm not sure if this is like a specific problem to my personal field of vision, but it did seem like sometimes in the midst of playing, if I'd moved around too much and they just kind of, reposition themselves slightly on the bridge of my nose, that I would have to make adjustments to make sure that the top and the bottom of the screen remain visible. Now, for some games, you probably don't even look at that portion of the screen that much, but it was something that I noticed throughout my testing, and, definitely something that I had to mention here. And finally, I know I already mentioned that this is definitely not the same thing as a full-blown VR experience or anything like that, but I have to admit it is a little bit jarring when you first put these on. And this might be something that I personally experience more vividly just because I tend to play, Beat Saber in VR just about every day. So in VR, you can feel yourself surrounded by the screen because of the OS or the application you're running compensates for your head movement to keep everything feeling smooth. These, on the other hand, are just like having a screen that is just sort of duct taped to your face, and it is a little bit jarring when you kind of snap and move your head, just out of reflex sometimes, and how it perfectly follows the action. I would say that it could cause a little bit of motion sickness if you're not somebody who's used to that effect, or it might, kind of just throw you off with your hand-eye coordination. And I also did find that if there were games that would experience like a frame rate stutter, that would be way more pronounced, because again, you're taking what is, a much smaller image typically and blowing it up to like this massive image that's kind of like right in front of your face. It can definitely be a little bit, I don't want to say nausea-inducing, because it didn't make me nauseous, but it might throw you off a little bit if this is the first time you use any sort of, AR or VR glasses. The best way I can explain getting acclimated to it is it sort of feels like when you have to relax your eyes to see those weird 3D like magic eye posters materialize. Kind of feels like that. But all of this is to say, after having tested it for a few weeks and started weighing the pros and the cons, what's the final verdict? Is this something you should plunk down your hard-earned money for? And I know that it's kind of a cop-out answer, but truly the answer is maybe. And honestly, to answer that conclusively, you would have to really take a hard look at a variety of different ways about how you engage with your Steam Deck and the things that are most important to you as a player. But for simplicity's sake, I'll put it this way. So if you travel a lot with your Steam Deck and it's your oasis in a desert of distraction, then yes, you will not be sorry that you made this purchase. Or again, if you're just somebody who's looking to improve their mobile experience just out of preference or for legitimate health reasons, kind of like I did, then yeah, I do think this thing is an absolute godsend and a true must have for, again, those specific scenarios where somebody wants that experience. But if your typical go-to way of playing is either docked up or you just have little regard for improving your mobile experience, this is probably a nice to have or an occasional must have for you. But don't get me wrong, even if you are one of those players who prefers dock mode, if you're traveling on occasion and just really like the idea, or you have to have just like this immersive multimedia cocoon of sorts where you can play games and just enjoy everything completely uninterrupted, you may still think this is worth it. I'm just saying it's probably not going to be worth for everybody all of the time, and that's totally fine. It just makes sense for me to outline the different scenarios available so that you can make the informed decision if you want to purchase one for yourself. But yeah, ultimately, if you're in the market for an accessory that will give you a very low-key but ultimately very high-quality way to enjoy your mobile gaming sessions on the go, these glasses definitely deliver that. Ultimately, if you want to grab a pair of these for yourself, I have dropped affiliate links down below where you can pick these up on Amazon. Big thanks to the folks at Viture for sending these over for me to test with. I really, really appreciate it. And on that note, I tried to do, as much testing as I could with the Steam Deck and kind of, look at it through that lens, no pun intended. But, if there's something I didn't cover very well, or if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below and I'll get back to you. And as always, thanks so much for your time and hanging out here. It means a ton to me. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.